I, Arundhati Mukherjee from Revert Media.
And I, Srinisha Bhattacharya from CE and CR, are delighted to have your presence today.
We welcome you all to today's webinar on Near Future Design and Construction Practices. This webinar is jointly organized by Builders Association of India, Mumbai Center, and Civil Engineering and Construction Review. This webinar is powered by Revert Media Private Limited. We would like to begin this webinar by welcoming Shri Mohinder Rijwani, who is the chairman of Builders Association of India, Mumbai Center. Sir, I request you to address today's gathering with a few words.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have pleasure in welcoming you all to the 19th lecture of the monthly lecture series of BI Mumbai Center. This is the second webinar being jointly organized by BI Mumbai Center and Civil Engineering and Construction Review, popularly known as CE and CR, and its sister concern of Revert Media. Today's webinar on near future design and construction practice promises to be very informative. We have with us today Dr. V.V. Arora, former Joint Director and Head of National Council for Cement and Building Materials, as the keynote speaker. I welcome you, sir. I also welcome Engineer Sunny Sulekar, Head Technical Services from Mrs. SS Buildchem Private Limited. He is the moderator for today's event. Today's webinar is aimed to discuss newer and recent technologies and practices which are likely to increase in coming years. We will hear about geopolymer concrete, high strength, high performance concrete, codal provisions, new admixtures, new standards and guidelines on construction material and project management, etc. The keynote speaker may also touch upon the recent revisions of standards on concrete mix designs, aggregates, and ultrafines, etc. I will not dwell much upon this topic and leave it to the keynote speaker and moderator to enlighten us. I welcome all the senior functionaries of BI from across India who have joined us here today. I welcome all the participants who have registered and are here with us today. I wish you all a very informative evening. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.
Thank you, sir. Now, we would like to present to you all CE and CR and Revert Media.
Civil Engineering and Construction Review, a leading infrastructure monthly on methods, materials, and machinery. Celebrating 34 years of publication. CE and CR is India's #1 infrastructure monthly news journal for the past 34 years. We have been providing discerning knowledge and an unmatched coverage of the construction sector since 1988. Get social with the largest online construction media network of India. Civil Engineering and Construction Review provides a valuable, informative, unmatched high-quality content. It is the most circulated magazine in India, having a readership over 17 countries worldwide. Google rank #1 under the search of Civil Engineering Magazine India and Construction Magazine India. We have a 5-star rating as well. Currently stands at 58,000 plus followers on Facebook. 16,500 plus industry professionals connected on LinkedIn. You can also find us on other social media platforms such as Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and SoundCloud. No one around us in India. CE and CR has been awarded the prestigious Best News Magazine by CIDC in the year 2014 and 2019. Best Publication Award by the ACCEI in 1991. Designated for International Quality Summit Award in Gold category in Paris by BID in the year 2012. We cover topics such as roads and pavements, bridges, construction equipment, concreting, precast, high-rise structures, waterproofing, and many more. CE CE and CR is read by construction companies, contractors, builders, government departments, public sector undertakings, building material and equipment manufacturers, consultant and architectural engineers, research institutes, polytechnics and colleges. Connect with the most circulated and trusted magazine in India.
Introducing Revered Media, a 360 degrees logistics solutions of business events. Who we are and what we do. Revered Media is an independent, full-service, professional logistics solutions company for business events. We specialize in corporate events with end-to-end event project management. Our commitment is to see each event through from the start to finish, while keeping the goals, vision, budget, and our clients' needs in mind at all times. We manage your events from conceptualization to execution, saving you the long hours, late nights, and endless emails so that you can focus on what's essential to you. We represent leading international exhibition organizers for promotion of their shows in India as well. Our unique selling proposition are: we have a focused and contemporary approach, wide contacts, rich experience in conceiving and managing high-profile events, working within deadlines and budget with maximum mileage and strong marketing instincts. We specialize in various types of events such as webinars, seminars, conferences, exhibitions, social media marketing, EDMs and e-newsletters, workshops, promotional advertisement and designing, public relations, product launch, award ceremonies, road shows, and many more. Our vision includes growth, innovation, affordability, and quality services. Contact us and join hands with Revered Media.
Introducing to you all our moderator for the day, Engineer Sunny Sorlekar, Head of Technical Services, Access Buildchem Private Limited.
Mr. Sunny Sorlekar completed his bachelor's in civil from VJT Institute, Mumbai, and his master's in civil from University of Michigan, USA. He currently heads the Technical Services and R&D Division for Access Buildchem Private Limited and is the Director of Institute for International Talent Development, a training organization specializing in construction-related training. He worked for over 12 years internationally in the field of building chemicals, across the USA, Europe, Brazil, Middle East and India. He is a Fellow of Association of Consulting Civil Engineers and an active member of American Concrete Institute, Institution of Engineers India, Indian Concrete Institute, Indian Society of Structural Engineers, India Chapter of the American Concrete Institute and ICI, Committees for Handbooks on Admixtures and Waterproofing. He is the President of India Chapter of ACI, a Managing Committee member at ICI, Mumbai, and Editor of Concrete India, Journal of ICACI.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I know you're all looking forward to a very exciting talk by Engineer V.V. Arora today. And this would be on, covering a very wide variety of topics, like right from materials to specification documents. And I think the last part of it really interested me a lot, which is that it is going to be talking about performance-based specifications. So without much ado, I would like to introduce Engineer V.V. Arora, retired last year from the National Council for Cement and Building Materials at Ballabgarh, that is NCCBM Ballabgarh. He was the past Joint Director and Head of the Center for Construction Development and Research. He did his B Civil from Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh, and his MTech from BITS Pilani. He, with an overall experience of about 39 years in construction, design, research and development, quality assurance, audit and training, he has been focusing his efforts on concrete technology, durability, service life design, waste utilization, special concrete, FRC, fiber reinforced concrete, condition assessment, and rehabilitation. I think all of these topics are very relevant. So hopefully we would hear a lot from him along these topics during his talk today. He is the chairman of BIS Committee CD 53, He's the convener of the working group WG2 on revision of IS 456, convener and member of various BIS and IRC committees and panels related to the design, construction, and construction materials. He's also the convener and member of a few panels of the ISO subcommittee of ISO TC 71 for reinforced and pre-stressed concrete, and has published more than 50 research papers in various national and international journals and seminars. So without much ado, I would request Engineer V.V. Arora to take over the stage and please share his talk with us for today. Handing over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sunny Sulekar, for the nice introduction. Is this screen now shared?
Yes, sir. We can see the screen and we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So good afternoon to all the distinguished delegates and panelists. See, my today's talk, I am not giving a detailed R&D kind of a presentation. So I am in fact touching on various things which have been done in the past and are now already started in practice to some extent. And they're likely to, role is likely to be increased in near future. The advancements in last few decades have been driven by the global scenarios, national socio-economic aspects, sustainability aspects, defense, etc. Sustainability aspects were also very, very important last few decades. We had been concentrating on waste-based materials and other things, and new things have come up, which will be role of which will be increasing in days to come. So that is why I don't say it's future. It is only near future. I'm saying because things have already started, and the thing is, use will increase. The advancements have been in terms of the automation, conservation of materials, less energy intensive materials, cost-effective technologies, better quality, better durability, and alternatives with any other USPs. Basic requirements when we do developments in civil engineering is that it should be a sustainable development and should be a safe development. Our focus has to remain on that, that things are sustainable and they are safe for future. For sustainability, we need emission reduction, conservation of natural resources. So we have to use low energy intensive materials, waste-based materials, use of lesser materials, increase durability because if structures last longer, then also you are saving on materials, which is possible through the proper design for durability. That is, we call it performance-based design. You can optimize the design according to the performance, so you are achieving a better durability and better sustainability. Today's talk, Mr. Sunny Sulekar has also joined. He is also from a company who are dealing with these advanced technologies. Maybe his input at the end will also be very valuable. For safe development, we need proper structural design, ensuring safe load carrying capacity through our design service life and meeting serviceability requirements. And robustness, safety against unforeseen, unwanted actions, less fluctuations during the use, design for fire, design for blast, design for impact. Those are the things which are coming up. Newer practices and materials, if you talk of, then increased use of materials, we will see in near future is the supplementary cementitious materials, which are already in use in this decade, fly ash, silica fume, etc. Blended cements, slag cement, and then now the tertiary blend cements are coming, composite cement, and LC3 cement, is a lime stone calcined clay cement also is coming now. High strength concrete was there since long, but there were no specification in our design. Our IS 456 did not have a design parameters for high strength concrete. We could make high strength concrete, but designing structure with high strength concrete was a bit difficult. So that will be becoming possible now. High performance concrete had come in NBC, but it is still to be well more defined for a better usage. C&D waste-based aggregate usage has started, but it has still to go a long way. Precasting is increasing, precast elements, and that is also to go a long way in the near future. Other newer practices which have come now is the pervious concrete, geopolymer concrete, controlled low strength material for backfill, etc. Because everywhere soil backfilling doesn't sustain, many times you have problems of settling the backfills because we could not compact it properly. The new thing coming is 3D printing. There are also significant developments have taken place. Newer design practices are the performance-based design, design for durability, design for fire resistance, etc. There's a lot of work on design for durability world over, even in our country also, but less on the design for fire resistance. We will discuss on that. Then comes the role of standards. You see, we have seen many times technologies available, but they don't get into much use in the absence of specifications and the codal support. Recently, a lot of work has been done in this direction. This is necessary for promotion of newer technologies. Some BA standards have been published, revised recently, and somewhere we are the leaders in the world also. Some standards are under revision and preparation. These are some of the revision standards, new standards in the last few years. National Building Code came in 2016. There was big revisions in the fire chapters, then the sustainability and high performance concrete chapter had come in that. IRC 44 and concrete mixed design has been revised, and previous concrete is also come in that. Guidelines for use of C&D waste and come up in IRC 2017. So that will also promote usage of C&D waste. IS 383 for aggregates has come. That is alternate aggregates permitted, C&D waste permitted in that. Which of course will increase the passage of time. We need more specifications. Specification for GGBS has come. Specification for ultrafines have come. Ultrafines are not taking place because we don't have much of silica fume in our country. Ultrafines are giving an alternative to that. So we will see increased usage of these materials because of the available specifications. Another development is the lightweight sintered fly ash aggregate for structural use. Sintered aggregate, fly ash based aggregates. Now, this has come for structural use. Earlier, the lightweight aggregates were not for structural usage. This document is for structural use of lightweight aggregates. One plant of IMFA has already come up in Odisha. And NTPC is also coming up with their project on sintered fly ash aggregates. So this will also come up because these lightweight structures have got a big role to play in the reducing the materials. Then composite cement 161415. This is a tertiary blend where we use fly ash as well as slag combined, and we reduce the OPC content to significant value, which reduces the OPC, which is an energy intensive material. But there are certain issues in that we will discuss. IS 1026-2019 has been revised concrete mixed design. There were some mass concrete has been addressed in that. High strength concrete is addressed in that. IRC SP 63 revised 2-3 years ago, interlocking block payments. Now, this has got a specific I have mentioned because in this code, this is an introduction of pervious concrete and CLSM. The specifications have come for laying under the block payment. So at least this somewhere it has seen the light of the day in specifications, pervious concrete, CLSM. So once we start using it, then the competence develops and more developments take place, more research takes place, and things start moving in that direction. So what is pervious concrete and what is CLSM, we will discuss now. IS 516, that is the test methods of concrete. This is a supporting code because without test methods, we cannot do much of the work. We cannot have developments. IS 516 has been split into various parts. This pertains to hardened concrete testing, and IS 1199 pertains to the fresh concrete testing. So this has also been split into various parts. Other numbers which are in for the testing of concrete, they all have been merged with 516 and 1199, and it is in a systematic document. This is 516. Some parts came in 2018, some came in 2020. And now we have a durability testing also covered in this, core testing. Then we have got included guidance on the evaluation of core tests, part 4 of IS 516. And this has been revised. Non-destructive testing has also taken place. UPV, rebound hammer, carbonation depth test has been added now. And determination of drying shrinkage, moisture movement, that has also come in this. And in 1199, one of we see is sampling of fresh concrete, determination of consistency. They were already there. But test of fresh self-compacting concrete, that has also come now in 1199, which was staggered here and there earlier. So with these specification improvements, the development, it will promote the developments in the newer fields. Standards under revision are admixtures for concrete. This is suggestions are invited from the industry on this. I had earlier, one of the lectures also had mentioned. More admixtures will be added to 9103, like corrosion inhibiting admixtures, crystalline admixtures, shrinkage compensating admixtures, and things like that. IS 456, plain and reinforced concrete. This is the major code of civil engineering. This is also under revision. Major revisions will be taking place in this code, where we are talking of performance-based durability design, etc. And roller compacted concrete is available in 68 ERC, and this is also under revision. And this will also be improved. Recently published standard is geopolymer concrete 2021, which usage has already started to some extent. And more players are coming in this. From abroad also, people are coming with patented mixes from Australia, from Finland. They will be coming for in the geopolymer concrete field. So we may see a good development in this area in the near future. Of course, it depends on the cost economics. If they can make it a little cost effective, you will have more usage. Otherwise, also this being a greener material to some extent, maybe this will also be a better development. Other upcoming standards are the precast sandwich wall panels. So precasting will see another improvement. Precast manholes, LCC composite cement, and precast other things are also coming like that. Two-lift concrete pavement construction technology is coming up, where you can have an inferior aggregate in the lower pavement and the better aggregate and hardened aggregate in the upper layer. And similarly, you can have a lower grade concrete. So that means local materials you can use in the lower layers, and better materials you can use in the top layer. So this is also not a very new technology, but in India, it has not much in use. Now, automatic systems are also coming for this. This I will not be talking much in detail on two-lift construction. I'm just giving an introduction on that. Supplementary cementation materials. This is not a new thing. A lot of work has already been done on this. This is just refreshing on that. It generates greener and sustainable infrastructure. Shift from traditional methods of construction is need of power. Any material that contributes to the properties of cementitious mixtures through hydraulic or pozzolanic activity or both. They are called supplementary cementitious materials. In short, we call it SCM. So these fly ash, silica fume, slag, rice husk ash, natural pozzolanas, ultra-fine materials, they all come under this category. Various SCMs are available, and fly ash, ground slag, silica fume, calcined clay, calcined shale, metacolene. Now, this fly ash is commonly in use, but other things are still not widely being used. Now, ultra-fine slag has also come in this category. Use of calcined clay will be increasing in making of cements. Metacolene will be increasing, and ultra-fine slag will be increasing in near future, because they also have supplementary cementitious properties. Fly ash is already, we have a document on this, 1535, we can generally use it. We got two types of fly ash, siliceous and calcareous. Our fly ash is mostly siliceous. This is the current specification of 3812. Why I'm showing this is, though this is an old thing. But today the problem is 320 fineness is generally not available. Only specifically this can be supplied, but the large quantity of fly ash we have, and which is being supplied by NTPC, and finding this 320 fineness meter square per kg is generally difficult. So there is a need for revision of this standard to reduce this to somewhere 300 or something. So this revision is also likely in near future. Silica fume standard had come earlier in 2003, long back. Silica fume is a addition of supracid is a necessity in generally when we use silica fume. The addition of silica fume will produce significant changes in structure of matrix, giving a densified, refined pore structure and greater strength to both physical action as well as pozzolanic action. The guidance on this is being added in mixed design codes, IRC 44 and IRC 10262. And generally it is being used in this range, 2 to 4%, and 4 to 7 for normal concrete, 8 to 10% high strength concrete. And for high chemical resistance, 10 to 12% also. GGBS, ground granulated blast furnace slag. Now this is a material which is cementitious material, and it is quantity used in concrete or in cement making is large quantity is being used in this. Only energy consumption is the grinding of the slag. Document for general use of ground granulated blast furnace slag has come in 2018, 1674. It is non-metallic product consisting essentially of glass containing silicates and limonosilicates of lime and other bases, which is developed simultaneously with iron in blast furnace. This is a very good material for concrete and cement, and this can directly replace cement up to 50% and even up to 70%. Our Portland slag cement has got this provision of 50 to 70%. So either people use it Portland slag cement, or it can be used in concrete also, wherever required at site mixing, where the proper mixing is possible. But if we are using it now, this is very good for resistance to alkali silica reaction. Wherever the aggregates are prone to alkali silica reaction, GGBS is used, and in that case, minimum has to be 50% to be effective against the alkali silica reaction. The requirements are covered in IS 12089. These are physical requirements of GGBS. Metacline document had come in 2015. The fineness of metacline is 700 to 900 meters square per kg. It's a very fine material, ultra fine material. It is a very high pozzolanicity. But because we are not making much of metacline in India, because of the clay limitation is also there. Caloric clay is required for this. However, we do have some caloric clay reserves also. So we will see some usage of this also near future. Now, this is a newer thing, ultrafine ground granulated slag. Now, one is the granulated slag, which we just discussed, where we use 50-70%. But the same ground is then ultrafine grinding is done. This becomes a kind of replacement to silica fume, which gives you more pore filling effect as well as the pozzolanic effect. Cementitious properties are also there. Code provisions for ultrafine granulated blast furnace slag are given in IS 1675 2018. Physical requirements for ultrafine slags are this: D50, that is the diameter for 50% should be less than 5 microns, and 95% of material should have a diameter less than 15 microns. So this is a very fine material. Slag activity index is also mentioned in this. So this material was being manufactured already, but specification was missing. So now specification is also there. So usage of this is increasing day by day. People are already started using it, and as the high strength concrete design parameters come in IS 456, more high strength concrete will be used, When we use more high strength concrete, more usage of ultrafine slag will be there, more usage of silica fume will be there. Composite cement, it's a tertiary blend cement where we use Portland cement clinker, fly ash, and granulated slag. Sorry. Okay. But issue is here the Portland clinker content is 35 to 65%. Only problem which is being faced in this is that 35% content of OPC. It makes the cement less durable in terms of the resistance to carbonation. That issue is being discussed in the BS committees. So presently it is not recommended for use in RCC, but in PCC road construction, you can easily use it. It's a green cement, very good cement otherwise. But for RCC work, it is yet to be permitted. It is being considered that this 35% value to be increased to 50-55% so that it becomes usable for RCC work, then it will be durable for RCC work also. So that will also, amendment will come in near future, maybe within 6 months, 1 year. And then this composite cement will also be usable for this. In composite cement category, we have got another cement that is a LC3 cement, we call it LCC cement, limestone calcined clay cement. That cement has been developed, but the standard is yet to come. So it is not commercially available as of now, but proposal on standard making is already in process. And that is also a composite coat where we have a limestone and calcined clay. Calcined clay is like our metaclaim. So it is a similar technology, calcined clay, and then limestone, Portland clinker. So that will also come in near future. High performance concrete is a high strength concrete generally, but with the specific requirement of higher performance with a particular requirement. This definition was very vague earlier. I mean, high performance concrete people had been using since long, but what is high performance concrete? And there was no such documents. Now in last National Building Code, this was defined kind of in a way, and categorization was also done. So slowly the usage of this will increase. It is in fact, usage is already there, but only thing is to specify a specifically high performance concrete. The performance requirements have to be decided for a particular usage, for which we need some more research. And as we have more research, then we will have a better specification for high performance concrete. High performance concrete can be for the higher performance because of the higher workability, constructability requirement. We can have a high performance concrete where we have strength and strength-related properties. If we say we need a high strength concrete, then very high strength concrete, that is also a higher performance. We can say we need a very high durable concrete, that is also a higher performance we are looking for. But then we have to specify those performance in numbers. So for that, we should have certain data. And now for durability design, we are creating the data for durability design in IS 456. And for other requirements also, we have to have, for example, if we need a high resistance to abrasion, then we should know for what application, what performance requirement should be there so that people can specify. So those things, researchers are working on that, and that will also come in near future. High performance concrete generally consists of these basic admixtures, nothing much special, but aggregates, water reducers, polarizers, mineral admixtures, chemical admixtures, fibers, polymers, corrosion inhibitors. Depending upon the type of improvement in performance required, admixtures are chosen and concrete is made. And some companies and RMC plants are already offering many kind of things, but specifiers find it difficult to specify the requirements in terms of the testing which can be tested. So if I say high impact resistance, so I should be able to specify the impact, what high impact I am looking for. And for my usage, I should know those numbers. So those things, more work is needed on that. High performance with respect to constructability is ease of placement, like we have a self-compacting concrete. We can have a high resistance to plastic shrinkage cracking, high resistance to drying shrinkage. For self-compacting concrete, we have got already IS 119 part 6, where we are given these test methods for that. So this can be specified in those terms. So when we talk of high performance with respect to structural safety and functional requirements, we can have a high early strength. We may ask for high early fractional strength. We can have a higher ductility, high resistance to abrasion, as I already said of this. Low shrinkage and creep requirement. Now, low shrinkage, shrinkage reducing admixtures were being used in the world in many countries, developed countries, but in our country, it is still not in use. Shrinkage reducing admixtures commonly, still not available in abundance. Some companies are making shrinkage reducing admixtures now, but they have to get it tested for that, and some standard has to be there for that. In next 9103 division, these admixtures will be available, and some specification will be available, so that we can, if a admixture conforms to those requirements, we can call them shrinkage reducing admixtures. Similarly, abrasion resistance I have discussed. Silica fume is particularly useful for spillways, stilling basin, concrete pavements, and concrete pavement overlays. Addition of silica fume has been found to be giving a higher resistance to abrasion. Similarly, steel fibers have been proved to be enhancing the performance in terms of abrasion resistance. So any high performance concrete which requires to be used for spillways and pitching basins, and we will call it a high performance concrete for higher abrasive resistance to the impact of boulders. There we have to use the silica fume and steel fibers. But again, as I say, the numbers we still have to fix that for using in spillways, and how much abrasion resistance I need and how to test it for that. So more research is being continued in this direction, but we will definitely see them in near future. Similarly, impact strength and penetration resistance. Incorporation of steel fibers increases the impact strength also. And silica fume also increases these properties also. We do have test methods for this. Drop bit impact testing is there. For abrasion also we have got the tests. But then we have to decide the specification. Concrete can be classified into various categories depending on strength. We have got a low strength concrete. This is conventional, not as per IS 456. Categorization, low strength concrete is up to M20. Beyond M20 is 25 to 50 is moderate strength. High strength 55 to 120. We call it now 65 to 120. And then beyond 120 comes the ultra high strength concrete, which has already come. The researchers are working on that. Some companies are also working on that, which can be macro defect concrete, densified small particle concrete. Reactive powder concrete is common name of this also. And these aggregates are missing. So that is why we call it reactive powder, because we don't use aggregates when we go beyond certain value. Aggregate concrete mortar interface, that becomes weaker zone. So aggregates are avoided. As per IS 456, categorization is ordinary concrete, standard concrete, and high strength concrete. And ultra high strength concrete is not yet put in the IS 456. It will take its own time once the technology is developed fully. Then properties are well known, and Indian material is tested for properties. Then it will be included in the codes. Now in the coming code, IS 456, design parameters for concrete up to M100 are being added. Earlier, we did not have design parameters for high strength concrete. We had this high strength concrete in our IS 456, our current IS 456, we do have. But then the note is given that for design parameters, refer the expert literature, specialized literature. The new code will have detailed provisions for the high strength concrete design. So a structural designer would find it very convenient to use and specify high strength concrete, and those approving the designs, they will also have some specification in hand to approve those structures. So then the usage will come up, but ultra high strength concrete is still at a primitive stage. It will take some more time. Same thing, it is there. Some findings in summing up on these specific materials on high performance is addition of silica fumes. It is a summary kind of what I have said earlier. It improves flexural strength. It improves split tensile strength, abrasion resistance, and impact resistance. And inclusion of steel fibers enhances toughness, moment capacity, tensile strength, ductility, impact resistance, abrasion resistance of concrete. Concrete with abrasion and resistance property can be designed using silica fume, high-range water reducers, where aggregates are mechanically weak, addition of fly ash, and a higher grade of concrete when we use in combination with these materials, that really produces a high-performance concrete. Because if our grade is low, then even if you add these materials, you will not be able to achieve a high-performance concrete. That also has to be kept in mind. This is a test for the abrasion resistance. We have got ASTM for this, and IS will also come on this. We have got impact test also is there, where this is impact testing. So these tests can be used to measure the performance. Coming to the high performance with respect to durability requirements, this I will discuss a bit later in this lecture itself, under performance-based durability design. Before that, let us come to the recycled aggregates. Recycled aggregates are construction demolition aggregates which are produced from the construction and demolition waste. That is, we are recycling the old concrete. In the forthcoming decade, the availability of natural occurring construction materials is going to be exhausted. So the need for present system is the alternative construction materials like recycled aggregates and either coarse or fine aggregates, both can be generated from the old concrete. If the old concrete is good quality, high strength concrete, you will get a good quality recycled aggregates. If you are crushing a very poor quality concrete, you will find a poor quality recycled aggregates. Those are variations are a big hurdle in the usage of C&D waste. If somewhere the structure is being rebuilt, kind of, if you are breaking a bridge and making a new bridge, or a multi-story is being demolished and a new structure has to come up, there it becomes easier because the grade of earlier concrete is also good and known also. Then in-house crushing will be better instead of sending the scrap to the C&D plants, because there it gets mixed up. I see alternatives to natural aggregates. C&D waste-based aggregates, we are now mentioning in 383. Then we have other alternate aggregates, is slag-based aggregates, copper slag, air-cooled blast furnace slag, steel slag. Steel slag is to be avoided in RCC because it contains free lime. Now weathering plants, people are putting up to remove the free lime, but it's a very caution has to be taken place, and caution has to take place. This steel slag, but air-cooled blast furnace slag and copper slag, they are very good materials. These two materials can be used. C&D waste, we are coming up with specifications, so this will be used. Fly ash sintered aggregates, I already discussed. A new standard has come, 914 in 2020, very recently, and IMFA is already making those aggregates in Odisha. NTPC is coming up with a new plant. So all these alternative natural aggregates will be available in near future. Steel slag weathered aggregates will be there, but I will recommend that for usage in non-structural things only, not in buildings and all that, because there may be, if weathering is not proper or something, we may have some risk on that. C&D waste, if you see, this we discussed already. The C&D waste comes in two categories. One is recycled concrete aggregate. There is a recycled aggregate. Now, this is a better quality aggregate when we demolish the waste concrete. And this is when we demolish a building and concrete and other things get mixed up, masonry, concrete, and those things. This can be used for some non-structural purposes. For structural purposes, we have to use RCA. This may have some 35% of the impurity in form of the masonry and solder, but those limits can be put in the specifications. okay, 3%, 5%, and then it can be called RCA. But beyond that, it will become a RCA, RSRA, and it is to be used accordingly. It can be used in many everywhere. So, and only thing is, government has to come up with a collection of waste. All countries, we are having a lot of waste being generated, and collection systems are still not very good in place. Everywhere we have to create the dumps in different areas where people can throw those C&D waste. Now people pick up the waste and put anywhere in the vacant space they find it, and sometimes they put it on the roadside also, which is a bad scenario. So once that scenario is improved, then the usage will also improve, because as far as the crushing is concerned, there's no such issue. Many plants will come up. Once the people get the waste available, so many people will be there to crush and sell it. This is the scenario world over of C&D waste. Australia, they say that they have got 57% usage, and Belgium also. But what I've seen is, and in many countries, even though percentage usage is shown high, but even their structural usage is less. The more of usage is in the plain concrete, and RCC, the usage in even in other countries is a challenge, because that kind of generation of confidence is bigger. In Japan, I had seen there, even though they say 80%, they have got very good aggregates. They are crushing, and their old concrete is also good quality. But still, they were telling that people have hesitation in using in the RCC, and even though 80% they are saying they are using it, but still the usage is in the non-structural mainly, and some structural usage in show grades. Many plants have come up in India. This is the old list I have. A few more might have come in this category. So things are going on, improving all over India. This usage is already there, so it will keep on increasing. But what is lacking now is still the revision of C&D specification. We have allowed them in the Tier 3, but we need a complete separate specification on C&D waste aggregates, where we have to categorize the aggregates into class 1, class 2, class 3, so that good quality aggregates are class 1, then medium quality and poor quality, so that aggregates coming from the low-grade concrete and high-grade concrete, they are treated differently. If you have got a class 1 aggregates, you should be able to use in the main structural buildings. That work is still to be done, and as that is done, we will see more usage of C&D based aggregates. Current specification, we have 383, IRC has put up a guideline. You have got EN code is there, BS code is there, Japan Society code is there. In Japanese code, we have got classification of different type of recycled aggregates. Korean code has also got a recycled aggregate specification. In 383, in 2016, the alternate aggregates were permitted. Iron slag, steel slag, copper slag, and bottom ash, they were permitted. Similarly, the C&D waste also. And we, in 383 2016, recycled aggregates permitted are up to 25% for plain concrete and 20% for the recycled, for the M25 and above, 20%. And for PCC, 25%. And IRC 15 2017, 30% has now been permitted in the DLC layer only, but the upper layer, the pavement quality concrete, it is not yet permitted because the abrasion issue is there. But if we use a two-lift construction, that document is coming, there we will be able to use the C&D waste aggregates in the lower part of the PQC. Coming to the conservation of water, we have got a pervious concrete. Pervious concrete is not very common in our country because there is an issue. This can be used in pavements where the water simply flows down, or it can be used under the roads as a drainage layer, because all roads we have got a drainage layers where the water percolates to the ground or to the nearby drains. We can have a percolation this, then that can be connected to a nearby drain and water can be allowed to flow. This is a concrete in which the water flows freely. The void content ranges from 15 to 35% and strength is 5 to 25 MPa. ACI got a good specification on this pervious concrete, and ISO is making specification on pervious concrete. This test method on pervious concrete is also already been made by ISO. The drainage rate is generally in the range of 0.135 to 1.22 centimeter per second. Higher the fine content, lesser will be the void content and lesser will be the permeability. And the choking, they are prone to choking also by the water containing solid particles. That research is also needed, how to unclog that and where it can be used, where it cannot be used. Currently, IRC is permitted usage under the pavements and so that it can act as a drainage layer. This is a very good material for that. Geopolymer concrete. This is a very this is a new and very promising material. This is a concrete where we don't have cement. No cement concrete, many people call it. It only consists of fly ash, GGBS, and strong alkalis, and they react at this site in the mixer to form a concrete directly. A new standard has been published in this during last month. Oh, sorry, not last month, sorry. This is an old slide maybe a few months ago. Now this standard, this standard is one of its kind in our country only. Other countries do not have this kind of standard available elsewhere. People have some specifications, but ours quite wide-ranging specification we are given. We are enabling code kind of guideline for mixed design company. This is geopolymer concrete paver blocks. This we had made in our laboratory at NCB when I was in NCB. This is a photograph of, this is a pavement we made there as a test stretch. We made here, and this has performed well. This is M35 grade of the blocks we had created. There were minor issues, but because of the equipment and all that, once we use a better equipment, those issues will not be there. And this is a very good material. This is a greener material, and there is absolutely no issue in using the non-structural components like paver blocks, curbstones, and things like that. In buildings, also in Australia and elsewhere, people are using it in RCC construction. But here we are still not allowing it because let people develop the competence. Let the people, players be there to do this, and then those things can be done. This is the document. Luckily, activated concrete for precast products guidelines. The grades shall be limited up to M40. We are allowed this. Application can be paver blocks, curbstones, blocks, etc. Alkali activated materials have been defined in this. What alkali activated materials can be used, and what is the definition? Everything is there in the binding materials can be the what are permitted as the pulverized fuel ash conforming to 812, GGBS conforming to IS 1674, metacolloid. All this we discussed previously. Calcined clay also, silica fume. All these are the binding materials which can be used. It is mentioned in this document. So people, different institutions, different people are using different technologies, different combinations. So we have permitted all kind of things that you can do it. You do some performance testing. It is also a kind of performance printed code where you can use any of these materials, and then you can create a concrete. If it meets the specification, you can use it. So initially it is not for RCC. Alkali activators. Alkali activators are generally sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, sodium silicate, potassium silicate, sodium bicarbonate, potassium carbonate. Most commonly used activators are sodium hydroxide, sodium silicate, combination of sodium silicate, sodium hydroxide, combination of potassium silicate, potassium hydroxide. But others have also been permitted. So those who have done their work on that and they want to use that, they can do it. But we are lacking in our country is research of the admixtures where we can improve the workability issues are there. There's quick setting issues are there. When we do the normal temperature curing. If you do high temperature curing, then the use becomes restricted to precast components. So this is possible at normal temperature also, about 30 degree, 25 degree and above. And you can use high temperature also. So different combinations are possible. People are using different technology. And this document gives a good guideline on creating mixes also. Guidelines for mixed design is also available in this. Guidelines for production has been added in this. Guideline for mixed design is added. And safety precautions have also been indicated. These are quite risky to use. So that precautions have also been put in this document. It's a good document. One should go through this. Now, what we are still lacking is we have made a document on the production of luckily activated concrete, but we have not permitted its use anywhere. neither 456 permits, not any precast paver block permits, nor the wall block code 2185 permits it so far. So we are working on the issuing amendments to those codes, 2185 and paver block codes and curb stones, so that this can be used there. So those amendments will come in very next few months maybe. So once that comes, then you will be able to produce the blocks conforming to IS standards and using geopolymer concrete. This will be a good thing. And there is a good future. Many companies are coming from abroad also, and Indian companies are also working on this. Mr. Sunny Surelekar, his company is also working on this in geopolymer, I think. He will throw more light on this when he speaks after me. Then newer technology is the, how much time I have? Still half an hour or so I have. Okay. Then we have this 3D printing technology. It's a very exciting technology. It saves a lot on labor. Though we don't have much problem of labor, but still mechanization, as we have seen, it improves the quality also, and many places, many times it improves the speed also. It is not only on labor saving, because labor will be used elsewhere in making of this equipments and other things, and there are so many infrastructure will be created. This is a three-dimensional printing, and it's a fast work, and for many things it will be a very good alternative. It is a 3D printed concrete, means 3D printers have to come up when you make an AutoCAD drawing. Now the current AutoCAD, it has got a provision for creating STL drawings. If you make a 3D model in our AutoCAD through 2019 and above, I think, you can save your 3D models in STL formats, and those STL formats can directly be used by the 3D printer equipment to create that structure. Only thing is you have to mention the scale and all that. Those are the print commands. Like when we print a AutoCAD drawing, we mention this size of the drawing sheet. Okay, this is to be printed on A1 scale. This is to be printed on the A2 sheet. So similarly, when we do a 3D printing, we create an AutoCAD drawing, a 3D drawing, and we create a solid model. That solid model is converted to a STL format. That STL format, we give a print command, and then we give a print command, we give those scales. The scales, okay, this will be the drawing you have created. Then what scale that house is to be constructed, you just have to give a scale, and that construction will come to that scale. You can just change the scale and create a small model of the house also. I mean, this is something which you create a separate models. Now you can create actual models also for the scale. And now this is the kind of a schematic diagram of the 3D printer. You have gantry grains where this printer moves. This printer is hanging there. It moves left, right, and to and fro, and keeps on printing the structure layer by layer. This is another view. This is a gantry where this is a printer nozzle from where the concrete will come, and layer by layer the structure is printed. See, this is how the layer by layer construction is done. We can have various kind of structures, whatever we kind. We can have a multi-layer, anything. We can have intermediate here, mesh kind of structures. And architectural will have a kind of boundaries when we do 3D printing. Because this kind of construction doing manually becomes very difficult. You have to make the formwork accordingly. That formwork expenses are saved on this. So there is no formwork involved in this. Only thing is you need a good printer. And then what you need is a concrete, which starts setting fast. Fast setting concrete has to be there, and which fulfills the requirement of the 3D printing, which generally is created using admixtures of accelerators, viscosity modifiers, and things like that. And for many things, for small things nowadays, you can even create a drawing and send to some suppliers. They send you models. But for actual construction, you need this kind of printer at site. These are a few other sketches of the 3D printing taking place. This is a constructed house. Now, coming to the Indian scenario. Now, those previous pictures I've shown you were the picture from other countries. Now, this is an Indian picture where this sample is created by a startup of IIT alumni. IIT alumni pass outs. They have made a startup, and they had done some work in IIT. Now they have started a startup. So they have made this house. So they are started commercial production in India. So this is a very, very exciting and encouraging things in these technologies. We are coming far, far away. And this is done by L&T. L&T is also coming to this. They have constructed 2-story house using 3D printing. This is also 3D printed house. So as this thing comes up, now more guidelines and specification on this will also come slowly. If it becomes popular, then the experience is there, competence is developed. Once the competence to construct develops, then competence to make specification also comes from there on. Because for making specification also, you have to have competence. Another is controlled low strength material. This is for backfilling, where we can dig and fill it. We don't have to compact it like this is self-compacting, self-compactable, flowable, low strength materials, cementitious material. Cement and concrete terminology. ACI has got a complete specification on that, not specification, but a report on that. Specification, the strength is around 8.3 MPa or lesser. It's a low strength material. So it's got a wide range of applications like filling voids under existing pavements, buildings or other structures. Particularly when you dig a road for laying pipelines and you do the refilling, those fillings are never compacted. There you can use CLSM. And if you have to dig it later on, then you put the CLSM beforehand so that you can dig it later on and refill it. This is a flowable concrete kind of thing, and this is being used in the backfilling of trenches. It's adjacent to building foundation. So this is building foundation wall. If you cannot put a roller here and start compacting, it becomes a difficult scenario, because that will have a lot of horizontal impact. So these things are useful. This is also coming up. We have got a specification. Now IRC has also given a small specification in this, as I mentioned earlier. It contains cement sand, coarse fly ash. Coarse fly ash is good for this thing. 3.1 Part 2 is good. Mixed proportioning guidelines are available. Cement content varies from 30 to 70 kg, and fly ash content varies from 460 to 1200 kg. Permeability of CLSM can be tested as per the IS 383085, and this is 1 to 10 power minus 8, which is lower than clay. That is coefficient of permeability of this. So it's a bit lower permeability than clay, but it is more stronger. Future aspects of this are it will be very difficult to find soil for backfilling. That is one thing. But second, what I feel is even you have soil, but there are many places where you have compaction difficulties. So they're also very good useful. IRC SP63 interlocking concrete block pavement mentions some specification about this. This can be used under that. Because this is mentioned in that because roadside we are putting the interlocking pavement where our future sources. So that part is left as the block pavement. So once we remove that, then you should have a CLSM filling there. That is why it has been specified there. Coming to the durability, which we are discussing earlier. Now we had been discussing about the developments in the material technology kind of things and concrete technology. Now this is the developments in the design technologies, how we design our structures. When we design our structure, we design for a certain strength and we have to design for a certain life. But today our codes are silent on if you made a structure as per the IS 456, you cannot guarantee how much life it will have. People generally say 50 years, but code doesn't say 50 years. So if you have to design a structure for 75 years, you don't know what specification I have to improve upon. CPWD specification says, CPWD maintenance manual says our structure should generally be for 75 years. But how to make it 75 years, nobody knows. So that is service life design is a performance-based design where we decide the performance. Performance is that we want this structure to survive for 75 years, or 50 years, 100 years. So that is a performance requirement. That means structure should be able to perform till that age. Now, how we do that? Our potential deterioration mechanisms causing durability problems are the permeation of carbon dioxide into the concrete and the permeation of colloids into the concrete. This is called carbonation-induced corrosion. This is called colloid-induced corrosion. There are other issues also, but this is the predominant issue I'm discussing. And out of these two also, our predominant issue is the first thing, carbon dioxide, because chlorides are not present all over the country. This is only in the coastal areas or in some industrial area environment, maybe there specifically in some specific location, and only in the coastal area. But now all non-coastal areas, totally we have got, this is the main deterioration mechanisms. Wherever we see spalling around our buildings, that is all because of the carbonation happening. So I will be discussing more on carbonation. Of course not, we got limited time in this presentation. Other mechanisms are of deterioration is abrasion, freezing, thawing, chemical deterioration, sulfate attack, aggregate reaction, but those are at the smaller level. I'm not discussing on that today. Concept of service life design is there in world over, it is there, but everywhere they are finding difficult to make specification and design procedure for that. There's a model code for service life design, Bulletin 34. It's had come long back, but this is only model code, not a country code. ACI had a specification. This is a report, ACI 364, but this is also not a standard or specification. This is also a committee report only, state of art report. So they don't also have a standard or specification in America also on this service life prediction. ACI Life 365, this has become famous because this is software. But this software, we have seen this doesn't give very good results. And this is also not for much usage to me. Then we have got an ISO document, ISO 16204, which was revised in 2012. Now this document is a good document, but this document also speaks of a basic concept of the service life design. It gives models for ascertaining the service life design assessment of the service life. But then there are many coefficients required which are missing in that, and they say at the national level it should be established. We have done a lot of research in this area, and we have done, and other institutes also, IITs also, they are working on this, and we are able to work out on those coefficients and work out the procedure for design for carbonation. Current developments, as I've said, is FI model code is there, similar to 16204. Japanese guidelines are available, ISO is there. Now, this is the common model which is used. Now, why we have to use this model is how we assess the service life. How we determine service life? We assess the service life because we say the carbon dioxide ingress deteriorates the structure. How it deteriorates? When the carbon dioxide enters the concrete and it reaches the cover depth, the C can be called here as a cover depth, cover concrete. And when it reaches the cover concrete, it depassivates the concrete. When the carbon dioxide enters, it becomes, consumes the calcium hydroxide available, and the pH value of the concrete comes down. A lower pH then makes breaks the passive layer around the reinforcement, and reinforcement starts corroding from that time onwards. And once the corrosion comes, the cracking and spalling occurs. So if the carbonation depth is less than the cover depth, the structure is safe. When the carbonation depth reaches the cover depth, then your service life is near completion. The corrosion will start occurring over there. You will have some few more years after that, but then it starts in a fast manner. So only issue is how to determine that, how much time it will take to that. Once we determine that time, so we have determined the service life in a way. That is the major thing. Remaining things we can tackle it. Those are minor things, factor of safety and other things we can do. So, but it is dependent upon the weather coefficient and the carbonation coefficient of concrete. That is resistance of a particular grade of concrete, a particular type of concrete to the ingress of carbon dioxide. And in fact, to the carbonation, I will say. So this is the model which is used in the FIB and ISO. We have done a lot of work on this model, but what we have seen is, and some other researchers have also pointed out that this may not always be root T. Power can be little different also. What we have seen is that when we use different kind of cements, OPC, PPC, this may not be root. Then we have to use a different power, 0.4 to 0.6. I mean, this root is 0.5, T power 0.5 is the square root. So, but it can vary from 0.4 to 0.6. So but basic model is similar. So considering this model, now this is being considered for the performance durability design for carbonation. And the details of these are being worked out. Weather coefficient is also being worked out based on the lot many investigations conducted in the country on the deteriorated buildings. From there, as weather coefficient is being worked out, and that will come in our new IS 456 standards. We will be giving methodology to work out this and simplified tables also. Last lecture, Mr. Oja had given detail on this, and there was some criticism on that this is very complex, but it will not be complex because simplified tables will also remain, and calculation-based design will also be possible. So those who want to do important structures or want to go into detail of that, they will be able to go. Those who want to use simplified tables, as they're using now, they will be able to do that also. General finding about the durability are PPC and PSC are more durable than OPC in coastal environments. PPC, Portland pozzolana cement, and PSC, Portland slag cement, they are more durable than OPC. In collide coastal environments, where the ingresses collide, we have got collide ingresses there. And OPC is more durable as compared to PPC, PSC in non-coastal environments, non-aggressive environment where distress due to carbonation is critical, as our North India mostly. So point 2 is taken care of while using PPC or early age strength, curing period, extra cover to take care of carbonation. If you use little higher grade or little more cover, so then the deficiency is covered up. So in the new IS 456, you will have complete details on those things, that when you're using this kind of cement, then what cover will be required, what grade of concrete will be required, and things like that. And then you can test the carbonation coefficient also. We give carbonation coefficients, carbonation resistance coefficients based on the water cement ratio and type of cement also. That will be for simpler usage. And you will be able to test it also in the laboratory. So major changes which are likely in the durability provisions, that is the performance-based design is coming up. Concept of design for durability is being introduced, that this is a performance-based design. Concept of service life is being introduced. Provision for durability design for 50 to 100 years. Exposure classes are different for different deterioration mechanisms. Today our exposure classes are not different. We say whether it is a carbonation mechanism or it's a collide mechanism, we don't differentiate it. But Eurocode has got different exposure classes where the structure critical deterioration is the carbonation and where the critical deterioration is the collide attack. So we have different mechanisms. So we should have a different exposure classes. So in a way, in simplified form, we will have more exposure classes depending upon the type of environment. So we will have more exposure classes to choose from. So we are putting a map of India also, climatic zones indicated from where it can be selected and linked to durability. And effect of quality control levels to be considered while designing for durability will also be there. If you are having a higher level of quality controls at site adopted, then a lower factor of safeties can be there. But if you are adopting a lesser level of quality controls, then you will have a higher factor of safeties. And what will be level of safety, how to define the level of safety, those details will also come. Quality control chapter will be revised. And in that, the quality control provisions will also change to some extent. Project management codes have already come up. Time management and site management, and this quality management is also there. But these details of quality levels will come in IS 456. So this project management I had mentioned in my abstract, but it is not, I'm not covering that because of paucity of time. It's already 1 hour, I think. Major changes likely. For durability design for resistance to carbonation and collide resistance, concept of limit state design being introduced. Now, this performance-based design for durability, this will also be a limit state design, where we will have the partial factor of safeties on the resistance as well as on the load. And durability testing will be introduced because you are assuming certain durability, but then we have to ensure that, like when we do a performance-based test for strength, design for strength, we say M35 we are using. Then we check the building for that, whether we are getting M35 or not. So we have to check that. Only then it can be called a performance-based design. When we are designing a building for a particular strength, we call it a performance-based strength design. So that is a strength design, and then we check also the strength. For Q testing, we do it, and flexible testing, we do it. Similarly, durability testing, once we introduce durability provisions, then durability testing also has to be done. Durability test procedures can be we can have a resistivity test. We can have a RCPT test, air permeability test, and then we will have oxygen permeability test. For oxygen permeability, a new code has also come up. Limit state of design for carbonation chapter will be there. Now, this I say durability testing. This is also durability testing. This is a long-term test for durability. This is the accelerated carbonation chamber. This test takes about 70 days, from where we determine the carbonation coefficient to be taken in the design model. Similarly, we have got a test method for the colloid diffusion coefficient determination. That is also a 3-month test. And for quality control purposes, we will have quicker tests. This is for colloid. We have got a colloid diffusion test where we immerse samples in the colloid solutions, 90 days. So from there, we determine the colloid diffusion. This is existing sulfate attack. Let us first talk. So now these are the tests which are used to determine the carbonation coefficients. Now, either you determine from these coefficients or we will determine from the equations which we will give in the code based on the water cement ratio and type of binder. Then for quality control, we will have other durability tests like I have mentioned, the RCPT test, resistivity test, air permeability test, and the oxygen permeability test. So that at the time of mixed design, whatever values you are getting on that resistivity or RCPT, the same values are some 90% of that it will be achieving in the field, for which samples can be constructed. Just like we construct cubes, we can have a small slabs, 1 feet by 1 feet, for testing, durability testing, in addition to the cube testing. Sulfate attack, there will be some improvement in IS 456, but this will not be durable performance-based design, so I am not mentioning much on this. Draft revised IS 456 will go for wide circulation after approval of panel and CED, which will come very soon for public comments. At that time, you all can comment on the provisions for further improvements. Then similarly, design for fire. This also got a lot of scope for the performance-based design. This is also coming up in the world over. I mean, not world over, I'll say, but this talk is going on world over and some research is going on world over on this issue. But standards and codes have not come up on this performance-based design. New Zealand code talks of performance-based design, but it doesn't give much detail on that, and it is left on the consultants. So this is not common, I will say. So New Zealand building code has provisions, requires time temperature curves for different scenarios. What is performance design for fire? That means like for durability, we say that we should know the performance requirement and then our structure is resistant to that. Similarly for fire, we should know the exact fire load in a type of structure, the type of material stored in the building, type of construction material used in the building. We should know what will be the time temperature curve if the fire occurs. And what are the firefighting measures already installed in the building that can be accounted for also to some extent or categorized. Then we require a time temperature curve for different scenarios. So those are different fire scenarios. We need time temperature curves for different scenarios. Currently, we use only a standard fire temperature curve. It is 30-40 years old curve. And similar curve is being used elsewhere also in the world. ISO also has got somewhat similar time temperature curve, ISO 834. Like our document has got a time temperature curve. But for building design, even those curves we generally don't use. That is only used for laboratory testing, etc. But we generally design it on the prescription given in the documents that if you are designing the structure for 1 hour rating, 2 hour rating, then we have to have so much of cover, so much of grade of concrete. And these are the things we are specifying. This is not, and the type of member. I mean, if it's a column, it will be different. For beam, it is different. And for slab, it is different. Because during fire, the exposure is different type. But when we say performance-based design for fire, I think on this performance-based design for fire, there was a complete lecture by a British scientist a few years from last month only. Which webinar was organized by AI Struct-E, and you can see the link on video of that also on AI's website. Performance-based design complete lecture is there available on that. So for that, we require a time temperature curve, first of all. Then we require procedures for computation of temperature at different depths from concrete surface for different members. I mean, now there comes the question of resistance. Our column, for example, if this is the temperature outside, then how much temperature will be near the curve, near the reinforcement, because that is most critical part of the structure. So for that, we have to have the conductivity of the concrete, the time of fire, development curve that has to be there, conductivity, type of aggregates which we are using, that will all depend on the grade which we are using, that will all be used in calculation to compute that temperature at the cover, near the cover. So that once we know that temperature, then we have to calculate the strength reduction in the structure. And based on strength reduction in the structure, we have to calculate the entire structure load carrying capacity, whether our structure is safe for that or not. So that is a performance. The design is very complex design, so in a way. And in the absence of research data on available files and other things, it becomes more difficult and very difficult to plan. So we are requires procedure to assess load carrying capacity. Eurocode has also got limited provisions. They also give enabling provision. So in our revision on IS 456, in the fire resistance part, we are also facing this issue, and this is two issues. What is lack of research data and lack of competence? Competence is required at two stages. One is at the design stage, competent to do all that part, nonlinear analysis and those things. And then the people who are checking the design, approving the designs, they should also be competent in. In our country, the research is very limited on fire, and data is also very limited on the fire accidents. In the fire accidents which are happening in our country, we are not collecting data on how long the fire was there, what temperatures reached, and all those things. So once we start collecting that, more research is that, then we will come to that. As of now, we are not jumping to performance design of fire. Only thing is, what we are doing in the next revision will be, maybe, as I know, that we are giving enabling provisions. Like we are talking of the strength reduction, which comes over a period of time, that data we are giving in the code. If we are using this kind of aggregate, what will be the strength reduction? And so that if somebody wants to calculate, he should be able to calculate what will be the stress strain curve at high temperatures. So stress strain curve for steel, stress strain curve for concrete at different elevated temperatures, that will be given. Then the strength reduction in the concrete strength over for different water cement ratios at different temperatures. Now those curves will be added, and it will be somewhat taken from the Eurocode mainly, but we have verified in our limited studies at NCB. So they are somewhat resembling that. So we feel that those curves can be utilized. So likely newer practice will be the Indian data is limited, as I said, and more research needed. In forthcoming provisions, some enabling provision. So largely it will be a prescriptive specification only, where the tables will be given like we have now, but only thing it will be upgraded. As more research is conducted and more competence is created, the data in IS 456 will help moving towards performance-oriented specification. That is what I have as of now. Thank you very much. I think I am well in my time.
Yes, sir. I think you're fantastically well in time, and that was actually quite a I would say very interesting and very broad spectrum, kind of approach to seeing where we are going as the technology progresses. Actually, what even though I was when going through the presentation, what actually surprises me tremendously is that I think we have got codes for almost each and everything. Like even if you say the modern materials like fly ash, or whether it is metacabling or silica fume has been around. But even things which are more recent, such as ultrafine DGBFS. So we have got codes for a lot of things, but then the kind of mainstream adoption is still, I think it's somewhere still lacking a bit. So what would you say would be things that we can do as an industry or together to kind of get these practices through?
Which particular thing you're talking about?
No, even for materials and also, for example, brand new materials. So the adoption rate in general construction, say, okay, maybe a few specialized constructions to use it, but in general construction for durability enhancement and all, the application rate is very, very low. So, or very abysmally low. So how do we get it? How do we get these new technologies mainstream into the mainstream part of construction?
What is your experience? Because you're also dealing in that.
Yeah, I mean, from our side, we are also in a very specialized line. I mean, we are facing the exact same problem.
Yeah, you got more exposure to the field than we have.
Correct.
You see, a few things I will say, then I will like you to add on that. What I say is like things like silica fume, it was a costly material, and an ultrafine GGBS is coming, a new code has come up that is comparatively less cost, and I think the use will increase. Second is mainstream, what I already said in my presentation, that high strength concrete was not much in use in buildings, because we did not have enabling provision, design provisions. So as now we are having the design parameters being added in IS 456. So once that comes up to M100, people start using M60, M70 very commonly. Now the M60, 80 is being used only by metro and other projects where people use EN code and other international codes, people can use it. But normal people will not use the Euro codes and those kind of things. Even access was limited, So once it comes in our mainstream code, so then that use will increase in the IS and the high strength concrete requirement. So with that will come the increased usage of silica fume and ultrafine slag. Ultrafine slag also, it was a specific product of the different few companies. Now specification was not there. Now specification for that has also come. So common departments can also easily specify it. They are not favoring to anybody or something like that. So that that is about those kind of materials. Then comes if we talk of the newer things, geopolymer concrete and all that. Geopolymer concrete, the cost will be main issue, and we don't see there will be much difference in cost, and some places we may be having a cheaper cost, lower cost than the normal concrete also, depending on the availability of slag and all that. Like JSW, they're working on geopolymer concrete. They've got a lot of slag available near the plants. So in that area, it may be economical. See, this economics also always works region-wise also. Because even we have seen earlier also, if you see concrete blocks, you will hardly see any concrete blocks being used in this area, the NCR areas. You will see only bricks available, UP and all that, because we get very low cost, high strength bricks, very good quality clay bricks available, and no other material can match that performance of the clay bricks, calcined clay. So, but whereas if you go to south, we don't have good bricks. Their concrete blocks are very common since long. Even a decade ago is very common. So it becomes area-wise also. Similarly, geopolymer concrete also, you will see if we have got available slag somewhere, things will become cheaper and it will come up quickly. So that is how it will unfold. And one is the availability of specification now coming up. It will boost the usage. Second will be the area-wise. And third is they depend upon the entrepreneurship. New people coming, and then how you sell your things. Some people sell even at costly things also.
Agreed. I think that
these are greener technologies. So greener technology name also you can sell even at premium also sometimes.
Absolutely. I think it's much more also something to do with awareness, I would say. Because some days it's very fascinating for me as well. We also go and meet so many people out in the field, as you rightly said. And sometimes we're discussing, basic things like waterproofing systems, the waterproofing technology. And oftentimes it seems that people don't actually know what the nitty-gritties of it are. And we find it sometimes we find it very surprising that, waterproofing has been around for, I think, 40 years plus. And still it's a matter of subject matter of a lot of, what do you call it, kind of mysterious still. And that's where it's kind of coming, that awareness or the engineering principles behind it are not coming out. The awareness is pretty much lacking. I think that might play a huge part. So maybe some ideas or some thoughts from you on how we can.
In fact, here, this is very right, because in this presentation also, I started with fly ash. Why I spoke of fly ash? Fly ash is a very old thing.
Correct.
But as you say, still there are people who are not aware of this thing, and they have an apprehensive about thing. That is why I mentioned these basic things also, because they are linked to composite cement, they are linked to LC3 coming up. So I started with that because awareness is still lacking. But as now I have seen, after this Corona episode, there were much more webinars than what we were having previously. And awareness has rather increased in this thing because so many webinars have been constructed. Earlier, we had limited seminars, but with these seminars, we had a few weeks ago a webinar on the durability. There also these things were discussed. Before that, again, I had delivered one lecture a few months ago. So these things are now slowly, there will be more exposure will be there through these webinars. I think this will be a very, very good thing for the awareness as you're talking. So from that point of view, these webinars will definitely help. And I think people will respond to that. We are responding to that.
So maybe the adoption part becomes easier.
Specifications, one is specification availability, other is the awareness. The two things. Correct. So now both are being attended to. Specifications we are attending to, and awareness is also being attended to by various institutes. See, here maybe there Indian Builders Association, then ICI also working on that. AI Structure, they did a webinar. So all these associations have got a good role to play, and they are playing a good role.
The awareness
they never had the budgets also. You know, you need a big budget for creating a big seminar, national seminar. National seminars used to take a lot of budget, and you had to arrange sponsors and this and that. It was a big event. Now this is quicker, and you had less budget thing, and it's a good thing.
Yes, we can definitely hope to, at least the awareness generation becomes good. So we're just taking a small break in this conversation. Can we take a few questions that are there from the audience? I think we have got quite a few in our chat box also. This is, I think, the first set of questions is by Mr. Sujit Kulkarni. And that is relating.
First is by anonymous attendee. Achha, first is from this KM Venkataraman.
Okay, that's in the Q&A section. So should we take that first? Should we take the chat box first?
So what about cost of CLSM?
Yeah.
Let's see again here. Cost will depend upon your requirements and the area. Somewhere even the backfilling will be from the already dig soil. So free, somewhere we have got the soil available for backfilling. We do the excavation of the same soil we do use for backfilling. So there is no cost for soil. And many a times you have to bring soil also from outside. And that may be costlier than fly ash also at places. So location wise also it will vary. And sometimes it is not because of cost, because sometimes it is a requirement also. As I said, at many places you cannot do the backfilling because when you do it, later on it sinks, because you cannot compact it. Where you cannot compact it, there you must use CLMF, even if it is a little more cost. And cement content is very less, and fly ash cost is not much. So there is not much difference in cost. It is, I think, 3%, 2% cement is there, so that will be a marginal cost only.
Yeah, that's a very interesting material. Can this material also be used like kind of, say, maybe as a sub-base stabilization or under,
even plastic concrete is being used, but those are specialized uses. I have not covered that. That's a more detailed. Okay. So that is also kind of soil only, soil-based replacement for cut-off walls and dams and all those projects. They use it, but they're using it.
Yeah.
We did some for plastic concrete also.
I used to work with this material a lot in the US, but in India, I've hardly heard of it in the last.
Cost, see, America and India cost issues are very different. There these costs can be penny costs, and here it becomes significant cost. That is a problem. Second question is from high strength concrete is expensive and is required only for columns, for slabs and beams, required and economic. Yeah, this is true. Even if you use it for columns, that's a good thing. We use save space, and but M25, M30, but for durability point of view also, when this new code comes, you may see that at many places M25 may not be good option. You may have to go for when here, for example, you're making bridges and those things, then you will need M35 also, M40 also for durability point of view also. So there are two things. One is durability requirement. Of course, for flexible members, the higher grades are required for durability requirements only, and for compression members the high strength concrete pays better. That is true. There is a material ultra high strength concrete also, which I indicated but did not go into detail because that is still going to take more time. We will not discuss that. Third is a very good presentation with so much information. Thanks. Can you please provide advice why there is limited precast concrete construction prevalent in India? The precast concrete construction is all cost. It all depended on cost. Precast became popular in developed worlds because of the cost saving, labor saving. They did not have labor. They had not did mechanization, and it was cheaper. So they had lot of precasting there. Even 50 years ago, they had a good precasting. 30 years ago. Now in our country, one is cost, other is time. I mean, if you do it very quick. Now, we have seen some projects coming up of precasting where people specified precasting only to save time. But the projects got delayed. You know, many places, what had happened in Mumbai also, many precast construction buildings were done to save time. Okay, this is very fast. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it was seen that they were not really that fast. So departments, they didn't repeat those specifications. They said, no, it doesn't save much time. It has taken same time. Sometimes it took more time, setting up precasting plants and other things. Now, if you have a ready precasting factories available and lot of market is there, you know, then it saves times, because you order the thing, you will get in 1 week, the panels will start coming in 2 weeks, then it will be quicker. When you have to create a new precast yard and all, that also takes a lot of time. And then total time saving is less. That is one reason. That's the major reason here. Other is precast smaller elements. That use is definitely increasing. You know, it will increase. Like lighter panels, that use will increase. Like I said, precast manholes are coming. That will increase, because that will have some additional performance also, better quality and all that. So if you give better performance requirement, like sandwich panels, if you have more insulation, you know, that becomes a unique usage. So if you make a normal concrete, your brick wall is cheaper, your concrete precast wall is much costlier. And if it doesn't save much time also, why you will use it? So those are the things. Then coming to the precast RCC structures, where complete structure is precast, column is also precast, and beams are also precast. Those structures are also coming up. Even now, DD is also making housing, low-cost housing, grid precasting. But there also you have to be very cautious about the earthquake things and all. These designs have to be approved. The design approval will also take time. You have to do some detailed analysis, or you have to do some prototype of that. Earthquake engineers, they are very apprehensive about those buildings. So those are the issues in precasting. That is only for when we do the complete frame precasting. But if you do frame is cast in situ, and panels and other things are precasting, that is there's no issue in that. But only thing is your panels should have better USP. They should have more performance. I mean, they should be cost effective also. If you use the partition walls, they should be cheaper, and those kind of things are also. The next question we have is 60% areas are earthquake prone industry. How precast concrete are justified to perform? This I already replied. Those are issues are there, because then you have to do prototype testing and all that to ensure that precasting technology which we are using, this will be earthquake resistant. How to use reinforcement in 3D printing? This 3D printing normally is done for walling and all that, where you can use steel fibers, but you avoid the normal reinforcement. You can have reinforcement in your slabs and all that, but which will not be normally 3D printing, which you can have at side, you can cast it, and then you have to do the precast. Once you 3D print it, then will be associated with the precast elements. Your lintel will be precast, your slab will be precast, then you have to erect it that. Last question is, nice presentation with a lot of information. You said IS Pharmacies will ask people to do testing for durability before deciding on cover, thickness, water and building. No, not for deciding covers, etc. For deciding covers, you can do it, but for at the design of mixed design stage, you can do it. You can adopt the parameters given in the code for this normal buildings. You can adopt that for based on water cement ratio. For important structures, where you want to do detailed design, there you can do that detailed durability testing before the deciding cover. But it is not like that. You have to go the other way around, because you have to decide a cover, you have to decide a carbonation coefficient, then you have to design your mix to achieve that carbonation coefficient. So it is at the concrete mix design stage you have to do it. At building design stage, you have to specify the carbonation coefficient or the colloid coefficient which is applicable. So once that is fixed, then you only have to design your mix accordingly. Like we specify the strength, we will specify strength as well as the durability requirement. Designer will specify. So your concrete mix will be conforming to the strength as well as to the durability requirement. That will be the thing, but not before designing.
I think Mohinder ji said he's going to answer this question next. Anything to add in this particular case?
Pardon?
No, Mohinder sir said it shows a note that he's going to answer this question live. Just ask if any comments on this.
Yeah, you can.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, by mistake I just clicked it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but any panelists who have got a comment to make on these questions, they can also make it. It's not that I only have to. You are all experienced.
Sure. Yeah.
On any of these things, if you want to make any comment, and any panelist, you are most welcome on that. Then we have one more question. I think last question, which is more acceptable: volumetric 3D printing construction. Mindset of occupants, surely. See, 3D printing at this stage, I cannot say much on this because we'll see how the things unfold, how the people come up with these solutions. Our companies, how they view the market and how they come up accordingly, this will be answered. The bridges are designed for 100 years, mostly design build. Please comment on them, on the performance. You see, bridges are being designed on 100 years, but that is a ad hoc specification we are following. I mean, we are just going for higher specification based on our general experience that, okay, these bridges were constructed and they have gone 100 years, so we can have better specification. So that is not a very scientific approach we are taking. So the performance based design we are talking about is, this is only thing is we are talking about more scientific approach where anybody can do this calculation. We don't have to have that kind of experience built in, you know. Why this knowledge, when we document the knowledge, it helps others to gain the knowledge of experienced people. That is what the documented knowledge means, you know, that is passing on the knowledge to the next generation. So you don't need an expert bridge engineer in that to decide the concrete mix, what will be found. You will be able to design that and you will. Of course, you can have a minimum specification based on your experience. Okay, we should not go beyond this, lower than this. That precautions we are also taking in 456, where we are saying that not less than this, not less than 20 mm. Those things we are putting in, those checks are there. So that is how it is. How the test will correlate with the actual concrete in structures. You see, from these methodology which we are creating now, this is based on the research carried out in the country, not only in the laboratory. This is on the existing bridges, existing structures also which have deteriorated. There are also many structures and non-destructive testing and etc. we have carried out. So that knowledge is also built in that to some extent. So even propagation period we are giving. One is the calculation of the initiation of corrosion. So that we are calculating. Now comes the question of the time structure will take from initiation of corrosion to the cracking. For that, still today, we don't have much of research and much of models available. There are models available, but there are tens of models available. And if you try using that, you will I'll give you different results. So we have not come to any conclusion on that. So for that also, we are giving certain fixed ages depending upon the type of material, type of environment and type of grade. That is based on experience of our existing structure. So that is taken into account to some extent.
I think it's more about the approach a little bit, like how we go about this rather than, than just sticking to I think a particular document and that giving you the answer. So I think a lot of this, since these techniques are very new, it will also involve little bit involve more of engineering. There's a little bit input from the structural engineer, a little bit input from the materials engineer. And I think the system will have to be developed like that. So to take it from theory to practice. That is what we should be looking at from now. So I think that's as far as the Q&A section was there. In the chat box, there is an interesting question. This is by Professor Ghosh from NIDM. What is the current status of bamboo concrete, and is there any regulations or evaluation criteria for their performance?
Bamboo concrete.
Bamboo concrete.
Bamboo concrete, actually, I cannot reply on that much because bamboo concrete, we have not done much of work. Bamboo construction, there is a detail on National Building Code, but bamboo concrete, we have not done any research on that. So I don't have much experience on that. Can't reply on that.
These might be some of the newer materials that are more taken from the taken a little from the sustainability point of view. So then coming back to this one, maybe one last question from my side, and we can close the session. So, sir, do you think, or what are your ideas? Like, how can we go about, bringing a lot of these concepts together? Like maybe say something like SOPs. Like say we know the materials, we know different design methods. and we know the construction methods, then should we be also looking at developing some sort of SOPs to bring all these things together? So it goes from like theory to practice part. So maybe some thoughts on ideas like that, like how do we combine the system together? That will be the key.
I mean, that can be deliberated at the institutional levels, like CPWD and all that. They can have their manuals. It depends upon what specification they adopt. Like CPWD is the main organization which can take initiatives in this, because what codes to be adopted, they decide, and then people follow a lot. See, when PPC had documents come up, CPWD had not accepted that initiative. So when CPWD started using it, then CPWD started using minimum 25. So then others start using it. So CPWD can take a lead in that, I think, to my mind, or other organizations also. But if CPWD does it, that will be for others also. But other organizations can also take a lead. I mean, if some manual, some specification of some construction department, if they create norms that, okay, from this onward, we will be using this. From this thing onwards, for this kind of structures, we use this. So they have to issue the instructions to their departmental officials. So once that comes, then it becomes very easy. And they have got infrastructure also. They have got competence also to do that.
Yeah, so something really needs to be done, because the way that technology is progressing and the rate at which we are adopting it.
In certain areas, they are taking a lead. They are using admixtures which are not even approved by IES. There are no specifications. There also they have taken a lead. They have approved those things, certain things. IRC is approving certain things for which there are no documents. Yes. They have got a system of newer technology adoption on an experimental basis. So correct. They are doing their bit, but then more synergy required from different segments.
Correct. Agreed. So I think, sir, thanks. That was, I would say, quite an enlightening thing. A lot of different concepts, lot of different ideas. And covered like pretty much everything from materials, like what is new in sustainability, to durability-based design. It was a little bit, quite a wide spectrum to absorb, but I think it all gives us quite good food for thought. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the great inputs. And with that, I will hand it over back to the organizers for continue and continue.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And
thank you, sir.
It was nice to having interaction with you.
I have one question to
sure, please.
Arora, sir. Sir, Sunny and myself, we are lots of into structural rehabilitations also.
Okay.
Very recently, Mumbai Municipal Corporation has developed their Performa B chapter, where they demand residual life after repairs.
Yes,
so, yes. Yeah. So can you please comment on that topic?
Yes, I can comment on that. You see, this service life design procedures and residual life design, they are interrelated things.
Yeah.
When we do the rehabilitation, so first we have to see where we are. I mean, if, for example, the carbonation has occurred up to the cover concrete, from there we do the back calculation and how many years this has happened. And from there we do back calculation and determine the carbonation coefficient of that concrete. Same model we use it, but I have shown you. And a similar model, we know the depth of carbonation now, time also we know it. So we can work out the carbonation coefficients. And then once we know that, then we can know how much time it will take. For example, the cover is 25 mm today. And in NDT, you have seen that many places, the cover 15 mm carbonation is there, 10 mm is yet to go. Yeah. So from there, you determine first the carbonation coefficient, then you will know how much time it will take to reach the rebar. Then beyond the rebar, also we are giving indicated time, how much time it will take to crack.
Correct.
So that is one thing. Now, that is existing structures, what is the remaining life we can assess in this way. Now comes a question where it is already cracked. Damage has occurred and we are doing repairs. There it becomes a little tricky, if you are removing the concrete around the rebar completely, then it is easier, because then based on your repair material, you can calculate and give it to some extent. And where it is, you are removing the concrete only up to surface of rebar, or little beyond that, then it becomes very difficult, because then you have to use the time, because then the passive environment is not there. Already pH value is gone down beyond the reinforcement also, behind the reinforcement also. So that corrosion will take place in that location. Then if you're putting anti-corrosive coatings, whatever, there are certain chemicals which we do the inhibitor.
Bipolar corrosion.
Bipolar inhibitors. Now thereby inhibitors, you change that. Now inhibitors, how effective will be and how much time that will take, that I cannot, speak on that much, that research, more research is needed on that. And I had been trying to do that research, but we could not do that completely. Yeah, then how much additional time that part is giving, that is still to be determined. Or based on some experience, it can be done, or some literature, if it is there, can be dug out. And then if we find some literature on that, so then we can use that. And for the new repair material, we can use again the same models, and then we can see how much. And even if we assume that some protection has come from the inhibitor, and then we can assume that even if some pH value is still down and some corrosion will still take place, it will initiate to some extent. Then also I said the progression time. Generally, the time it takes to progress, that time is 5 to 10 years we are mentioning in the code. Then those times are to be mentioned, where it is in the advanced stage. We generally in NCB, we had been giving those kind of times where we are doing extensive repairs. So we had been giving 10, 15 years of approximate assessment of the remaining life, unless until we remove the concrete beyond the reinforcement. For normal repairs, we give 10, 15 years of time. After that, you have to reassess the structure and then you have to do. But where the NDT shows the damage is there, but the cracking is not there, there it is easier to specify what is the residual life, and then you can do some remedy and increase life to some extent.
Thank you, sir.
But if you can dry the concrete, one more thing I will say is, if you can dry the concrete, you can reduce the rate, because for carbonation, some moisture is needed. It has to be totally dry. And if you dry it and then put anti-carbonation coatings and insulate it, kind of moisture doesn't penetrate. So then also you will be increasing the life of structure.
Exactly. So I think that's why even I was going towards like a protective coating. That is one. And today there are actually a lot of these multiple platforms also available. I think you showed like 365 is one. I think then there's one. There are a couple more like stadiums. A lot of these new models or new.
Models are available. Many models are there which we can use it. But only thing I say, we have to see which models fits in. Because sometimes we find 3 models and they are contradictory. But if you don't have anything, then you have to rely on that only. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Absolutely.
So you have to see the comments on those models. If people have used that and they have found results, okay, so then those models are usable. Like we check reviews on the Google, so you have to check the reviews on those models.
Correct.
So if those models they seem to be good, it can be adopted.
So then, sir, maybe should we conclude the session today?
Now I would like to request Mr. Anirudh, Honorary Treasurer of Builders Association of India, Mumbai Center, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Arundhati. Near future design and construction practices. See, India is almost $3 trillion economy, and almost all climatic conditions persist from the globe. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Almost all climatic conditions which exist on this globe exist in India. So it's a very challenging task. And I thank BAI, CE and CR and Revered Media for this novel initiative of online education and continual knowledge upgrading in present scenario. And our step-by-step return to the scene that existed in pre-COVID world. I thank Arora sir for his deep insight to the subject, near future design and construction practices, and now new combinations rather intelligent and smart mix of design, material science and technology, how this can help us achieve the logical conclusions of novel motives of construction industry. Also, how green practices through codes of practice of new versions of concrete can help sustainable future. We hope this lecture presentation will serve a milestone for quick online reference for students, professionals, and practitioners of construction industry, engineering, and technology. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Very interesting.